Hello, and welcome to Clea's World. I am Clea Annecchiarico, and today I would like to speak about ascension and polarity. But before we move forward, I'd like to ask you to please like, subscribe, and share this video. And also, I would love for you to put a comment below the video because I would like to know how this resonates, if it resonates with you. All right, so let's jump right in. Since I have started communicating more closely or getting guidance from the 25th dimension, I've noticed that there are things that I hear out there that contradict some of the messages I'm getting. And some things that instead speak about some situations out there or some truths out there that may just be coming from a different vantage point. Basically, I have seen that there are people, depending on where the person is getting their guidance from, depending on the dimension that they're getting their guidance from, they might have a different perspective of certain things. And this doesn't mean that what they are saying is wrong in any way. In fact, it could totally make sense within the set of cosmological rules that I've had explained by the 25th dimension. And it totally makes sense and it's fine. And I'll give you a direct example of this. For example, the 25th dimension, let me know in no unclear terms that there is no such thing as ascension, for the simple reason that this is a game that we're playing to distract ourselves and entertain ourselves from the forever and ever and ever eternal reality that we live in the 25th dimension, and that we already ascended masters. So we don't need to ascend. There is nothing that is going to improve inside of us or that needs improvement inside of us in terms of our connection to source and who we are as essence. And absolutely that resonates with me. I do believe that ascension is more of a, it has more to do with our idea of getting better, which is based within the matrix. That said, though, we have to use terms for when we describe phenomena that do happen in the matrix, like, again, self-improvement, raising our consciousness, having a greater understanding and expansion of what we're open to, of messages we get. And therefore, we call this ascension or awakening, and that's perfectly fine. But these are, I think of them as names for game rules. So what we're doing when we're acting like this inside the matrix, and again, please keep in mind, the matrix is not just on this planet, according to the 25th. The matrix is everything that we have created from the 25th that is part of the game that basically is meant to entertain us. And so it totally makes sense to have ascension and all these things, okay, going on. So I have no problem at all when I hear people talk about this, because if you're talking from inside the matrix, say from a Pleiadian perspective and Arcturian perspective, it totally makes sense to describe it to us in our human form as this is what you're experiencing, you're ascending, you're learning more, you're becoming more multidimensional. Now think about it, we're already multidimensional. We don't have to become more multidimensional, but we do become more aware and more connected to the fact that we are multidimensional beings. So it totally makes sense. So I have no problem with anybody else explaining things differently or explaining things within, again, within the realm of the matrix itself, because it totally helps us understand things and what we're moving towards, or what to look forward to, which is wonderful. I think it's great. There are so many uplifting and optimistic messages out there. However, there are times when there is a very clear misunderstanding. And I think there's some people have a bit of a wishful thinking about stance about certain things. So it's not just about having a different vantage point to where you describe things from that particular vantage point. It's also that I think what seeps in is a bit of our human nature, where we want to see certain things. And also, of course, we do a lot of we hope that there's something better waiting for us. And I mean, I cannot blame these people, of course. And this might very well be the guidance they're getting. It might not even be them getting, trying to be optimistic, but that's fine. However, there are times where this is in direct contradiction to the information I'm getting. And one of these particular times, which I think this creates misunderstanding as to the nature of what we're walking into, is the concept of polarity. I have heard people say that in 5D, and they mean in New Earth, because they assume the New Earth is 5D, whereas we already know the New Earth is actually 7D. But let's say when we move to 5D, or basically when we raise our consciousness and we're ready for the next step, so let's call it on New Earth, we are going to not have polarity any longer. This is not correct from what I can tell, because not only I was told that there will be polarity and even neutrality in 5D, but it's because it's a basic misunderstanding about the nature of polarity. The reason many of us have such a huge issue with polarity is because, unfortunately, the way that we've seen the dark play out on this planet is awful. We are so sick and tired of it. We have not been allowed to expand and explore our light side nearly as much as we should have been able to do, even though we are in 3D. There should have been a much more fun planet to be on, even while having polarity. But the dark took this game to the extreme, and we have had we basically lost our balance a long time ago. So there is no balance between light and dark on this planet anymore. There hasn't been for a long time. Now the light is increasing, but the dark has had the upper hand for a very long time, and it has undermined the way that we've experienced this game, this particular game, or a portion of the game. So with that understanding, I totally understand when people don't want to deal with polarity anymore, because they assume, again, that polarity is what we've seen here, which is evil, violence, extreme cruelty, almost madness. These people, this greed, these people that are willing to do whatever it takes for money. It's a very disturbing concept when you actually think about it. But that doesn't mean that just because this is what we've seen of the dark here, it's what we'll see in the future, and therefore we can't have it anymore. We are still going to have polarity, but actual polarity, balanced polarity, all it is the fact that we're going to have two different separate sources, light and dark, that are in balance with each other. And so the dark is not going to be just as dark, if you want to put it that way, as dark as it has been on this planet. So for example, on New Earth, we are going to have polarity, but it's going to be more of an eternal thing. And let me explain this a little bit further, because I did have more messages downloaded during another follow-up hypnosis session where they showed me exactly what's going to happen on New Earth. And I will put out my new session in the next several days. I have to finish transcribing it. But for now, I want to speak about this concept because I think it's very important. The problem we've had here is that we have had to choose between light and dark. It's almost like we basically chosen between being a part of the light team or the dark team. And then we've let other people outside of us play the opposite role, which means that we are separate. So we played the separation game really well. We can say, oh, but I'm a good person, but look at that person. That person is a bad person. Okay. And what this has done is made it very obvious, very visible to us, the game of the light and dark. Okay. We can actually point our finger to someone or something outside of ourselves and say, oh, that's bad. That's wrong. And there are plenty of situations where you can do that here. What's going to happen as we move forward to New Earth is that I was actually shown this, is that we're going to all embody, because we all have dark and light inside of us, and we're all going to be embodying our own darkness, and we're going to be aware of it. What this means is that we are not going to live vicariously through the dark, through somebody else's darkness, our experience of the dark. Whereas the other person is left to just be dark or mostly dark, and we're left to only be light because we cannot even look at our shadow. We cannot even look at our dark. Keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with dark. Darkness gives contrast to the light. There would be no light, no appreciation, no understanding of the light if we did not have something to compare it against, which is going to be darkness. Darkness is not bad per se because it's not the light. They work together so we have an understanding and, again, appreciation for all there is. But in the future, as we grow in our understanding and we move to new earth, what's going to happen is that we are going to be aware, all of us are going to be aware of our darkness, the darkness we carry inside, and we are going to look at it. And the way they showed it to me is we were on new earth, and of course we look the way I've described before, which is translucent, diaphanous in some way. We're not going to be transparent, but we're not going to be as solid as we are here, and we're going to be sparkly, and we're going to have these auras of light, of bright light around us, but we're still going to have bodies and all of that, the way that we're going to look the way we look now. Now we might be taller or thinner. I don't know. I actually have not asked this. I should actually ask. I'm curious now. But we are going to look just gorgeous, really. And one of the things we'll be able to do is we'll be extremely aware of energy, especially and including and starting from our own energy. So what that means is that they were showing me the scene where we're going to take this energy out of our bodies and we're going to look at it. And it's going to look almost like a ball of energy that we look at. And in this ball, which might be dark, they showed me a darker ball because I was thinking of, we were talking about dark energy, basically, again, the polarity game. We're going to be looking at this ball of energy and we're going to realize, which might be sadness, anger, any type of emotion that we consider not good, not positive. And we're going to look at it and we're going to understand it. And we're going to realize this is part of us. We don't need to antagonize it anymore. We don't need to see it as extraneous to us. We don't need to feel rejection towards it. It is not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's just energy, like everything else we have inside of us. It has been our resistance against what we call negative emotions, sadness, sense of lack of worth, isolation, needs, this feeling of need that takes us to greed and to survival and all these other things that have caused the extreme result we've seen with the dark. The moment we start looking at it and we realize this is all part of our complexity, is part of our system, is part of how we're made, and we're supposed to be made this way. There is nothing wrong with us. Then all of a sudden it takes on a completely different perspective and it takes on a completely different view for us. And the moment that we stop rejecting it, we can actually absorb it and appreciate it for what it does for us. And you know this, the second that you start looking at a reality differently, the reality looks different. All of a sudden things that look so dark and so scary, they're not going to be anymore, because we're going to realize where they come from, what they're related to, what they're doing for us. This is basically an optimized and accelerated version of doing your shadow work, which so many of us have done, but there are so many more in the masses that refuse to look at this because they don't want to even tell themselves, oh, I may have something inside that's pushing me to feel a certain way or do certain things. They just want to say, I'm a good person. Because if they start thinking that they might have some tendencies that they see played out in reality that they don't like and they can point their finger at and judge, they might think of themselves, oh, I'm bad. Because the problem is that they don't realize there's a difference between doing something and being something. You don't have to be bad to do certain things. One thing is doing actions that are not positive and lower everybody's frequency, the planet's frequency, they hurt somebody. And the other thing is to be bad. And we do, as humans, have a really huge issue with the distinction between judging an action as opposed to judging a person. And that's a whole different story, and probably enough content to do one or more videos around this. So I don't want to go too far off on that tangent. But the whole point here is that when we move to New Earth, we are not all of a sudden not have polarity. Without polarity, it would be extremely boring. There would be nothing to learn. It would all be light. So the dark helps us to understand things. It helps us to make us more powerful so that we know exactly what energies we can draw on, because darkness might even start to where you feel ambitious and competitive and you have this urge to do something. This is actually a good thing. But as you know, on this planet, when you take it too much to the extreme, it can become a bad thing. So this is all a part of understanding, where do you draw the line? What is the ideal situation, energy input to have in a particular situation? What's the right mixture? We're going to be like chemists in a way. And this is all exciting. And so I wanted to put this out because, again, there's a lot of information out there that's not necessarily correct when it comes to polarity. And again, because we look at polarity as at the dark as a very evil thing, it isn't. And the reason we have, well, we've seen some evil manifestations of it on this planet, that goes without saying, but it isn't per se evil, because again, it has a purpose, and this purpose is extremely important because it is what adds wealth to our experience, to our reason for even coming into this game and experiencing things. Remember, our goal is to experience. Now, one thing quickly that I wanted to add is that if you notice, I said that not only we're going to have polarity, but we're also going to have neutrality. So neutrality, it was explained to me, for example, that my daughter has neutrality. Now, I don't know, I'm not asked if this is a situation that happens with all kids, but I think that sometimes a kid, and it might happen with adults as well, I'm not quite sure, we'll have to inquire more into this, but sometimes a kid doesn't want to pick necessarily how they want to experience this polarity in their life. And so what they do is they just absorb. And that's what neutrality is. It doesn't mean, I always thought, when I have heard about neutrality before, I always thought, oh, somebody who doesn't really care, whatever goes, right? You offer him, it's all about themselves. So you offer them to be part of the light. They're like, yeah, okay, I'm having fun with it. But somebody gives them a better offer on the part of the dark. They're like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Like they have no moral compass. But actually, this is not the way that neutrality works. Neutrality is about the fact that you're absorbing all this information, and before you decide how you're going, into what dosages you're going to absorb light and dark into your own life. In fact, I think it's wonderful if this does happen to all children, that they take their time to decide, because you cannot make a conscious decision and a responsible decision until you've taken in all the data. And the fact that we try to sometimes give them the answer already is, oh no, that's not nice, you got to do this thing and that thing because this is the right thing to do, is not necessarily beneficial to them, because it's not really explaining to them, it's not really letting them see the consequences of certain actions. And luckily at that age, when you're a child, the consequences are not that huge, so it is okay to play with these different emotions and these different games where they might not be so nice. For example, you see kids, sometimes they're bullying each other. I'm not justifying this. I'm not saying it's great. Okay. As an adult, you look at these things and you realize it hurts people's feelings. It's not necessarily, of course, we also worry that these kids are going to become criminals or something. But what I see it as now is that these kids are trying different roles within reason. Obviously, we're talking about normal, average things happening out there with kids when they tease each other or whatever it might be. They might not have the same tact in approaching each other as we would have with other adults. And that's understood. We're just much more sophisticated. we realize that we can hurt people's feelings, whereas children, you know, don't have this understanding depending on what age they're at. And so I'm seeing now that there is a purpose for this. It completely makes sense that some of these kids would be neutral, and which doesn't mean that they are dark or they're okay with the dark, again, especially because the dark in their particular circumstances is really not something that you and I would consider dark. We're not talking about any of the evil things we've seen the adults doing in this world. And so I think it's their way to get their feet wet in the game and see how things actually work in real life. So I actually now not only understand better the concept of neutrality, but I also appreciate that there is a place for it, and not everybody has immediately to belong to the light or the dark. I'm sure some souls have their own path where they choose up front, but as I said, I was told that my daughter is still choosing, is still deciding, and I'm sure she's not the only one. So I hope this helped, and that it resonated somehow. I would love to hear from you. I would love your comments below this video to let me know what you know, if this makes sense to you, and if it doesn't, why it doesn't. We're all learning together. We don't have, unfortunately, we don't have the knowledge that should have been passed down to us. This is one of the problems with the dark completely going off charts here, is that they took away our ability to even remember things we were supposed to remember here. So we're here rediscovering our nature, rediscovering who we are and what we're here to do. So absolutely, I'm interested in a conversation. So thank you so much for watching this. Please like, subscribe to my channel, and share this video. And again, I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Take care.